Hello, I'm Richard Raffan. In this video, you're going to see how I made this little bowl. It's out of a fairly unpromising blank. Had a pretty rough kind of natural edge on one side and rather a lot of sap. I think it's Sydney blue gum, not sure. Anyway, it came out very nicely in the end. So I have here a bowl blank. It's about 7 inches diameter, so 170mm. And there's a split there. There were some other little splits around here. So we'll. I'm really thinking in terms of having the top here. Normally I would have this as the base, but I just thought with this odd bit of it's fairly rugged looking, but you can probably do something with this sort of thing. So I've drilled a hole here. That's going over these pin jaws, and I will. So they're going to expand in there, and I will. And the piece is fairly well balanced, or is it? No, it just the whole thing needs to go slightly that way. So I get the basic blank is better balanced. So that's going to there. And in order that it won't wobble around too much, I'm going to bring up the tail center. So the grip isn't that fantastic on the expanding jaws, just tighten it up a wee bit, but it's just slightly on the skew. So the first thing to do is going to be to get a foot on the bottom of this. And I'm going to do this as usual with a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. This is my new 1/2 inch spindle gouge, which you saw me grind in a recent video. So just using just slightly to the left of the nose. The main thing is to get rid of all the eccentricity as quickly as possible, and then to get a foot on it. Right, so that's still a little bit domed. Using the nose of the tool for a shear cut. That is straight undercut, got a nice straight edge there, and bring the foot in a little bit. Now, having got it to that stage, I need to grip that so that I can then grab it safely from the other side, and then I can just true up this, and I can just true up this hole and get a better grip on the thing. Should go into the step jaws. Now the jaws are going to be open that much, so there will be marks on this foot. The foot is about 1/8 of an inch at the most height. That's quite enough, and those marks will come off later. So next thing is to make a recess in the center here. I'm just going to do that with a square end scraper. Now that's my fallback in case the whole thing flies off. I'm going to eyeball the diameter of the chuck. just make another recess here so I can expand these jaws into inside here. Now I want this surface slightly tilted slightly inwards, so the chuck jaws will go into that corner. Doesn't look quite deep enough, we'll just go another 1/8 of an inch. Step it out. And this is quite dusty, making me cough a bit, but I can't wear a dust mask if I'm talking to you. I'll just bring that back. And I haven't made that quite big enough. So out we come again. I could cut this bit out, but I think it's a good idea to show, you know, that you can take things in and out of the chuck. People don't seem to be, you know, too keen on doing that often, but it's a good thing to be able to do. Very dry, this stuff, and I think it's some kind of red gum. Right. Next thing I want to make sure is that the high points, actually I better take this off first, and then I want to check that the low points are in the same plane, and also the high points. Pretty good. So what I want to do now is to get rid of the flat areas up at the top. Gone. Oh no, not quite. That's that. And I can now start to think about the shape a bit, and I think I'll actually put this into these chuck jaws, which means I think those are the right size. If they're not, there's just going to be something else I can show you. So making a mark with the left to line up with the right with the center between the 2 points. So it's right on the diameter. And come in on that one with the 1/2 inch spindle gouge again. That's coming right in on that line, and at this stage just go straight in. Develop that shape a bit more. And this stuff feels as if it'll scrape fairly well, so let's use this skewed scraper to get a better angle of approach. You don't need to move quite so far, physically yourself, quite so far as if you use a square end scraper. You can do it with the square end one, but the tool just has to swing around so much more, so this is easier. Now coming up onto the place where there's not bark, not solid wood all the way around. Oh, that's picking up a little bit, which is irritating. I'm going to shear scrape this with the tool tilted up on edge, because you get less wood in contact with the edge than you do if the tool is flat on the rest. It's very easy to have far too much wood in contact with the edge. Yes, far too much wood in contact with the edge when the tool's flat and the rest tilted up, and you never get more than about 1 millimeter in contact. So hand plant it on the rest and just squeeze the tool in. And watching up on the upper horizon to see what's happening to the shape. And my solution to the rough top is going to be to burn it, char it. Just taking away a little lump at the bottom there. The red part is working very nicely indeed. Sap leaves quite a bit to be desired. Anyway, I'll come across the bottom here. Little jarring sound is me just going too hard for the wood. Keep this foot, so just make a bit of decoration in there with the corner of the tree. Oh dear, being a bit careless. So it means right, so this is going to be a chunky bowl anyway, so it doesn't really matter on this occasion. This will make a lot of you feel much happier out there that I've had that big heavy catch. I would like to have a look at it as well. It's a little bit torn in there, but that's actually basically smooth again. An angle there. Yeah, that will be fine. Now I'm going to round this foot over. Still just using the 1/2 inch spindle gouge here. First one which came to hand. Rotate it very slightly anti-clockwise to get the, you can see where the dust is coming off the right wing, and then I can roll it over and use the left wing just to stroke the other surface. And that will basically round over the foot enough that it'll be a nice rounded foot and it'll fit nicely into the chuck. Now that gets sanded, and because I think the grain had picked up a little bit on the end grain, it had, and there's what might be a bit of a split there, but I'll just attend to that. We'll see what's happening once it starts to get sanded. I'm going to use the power sanding on this, starting off with 120 grit, and if I do this with the lathe running, then as I come from the gap here into the leading edge, that'll just get sanded more aggressively than the trailing edge, so it tends not to look so good. So in this situation, you especially if you've got a hand wheel on the back of the lathe, then you can hold the sander and rotate the wood past the sander. Alright, the dust extraction's going on for this. Bring my hood in a bit. Teeny bit of picked up grain there and there. Still in reverse. If there's some there, there'll be some the other side as well, usually. I just caught the edge of the abrasive there. Now going on to 180 grits. I'll do the bottom by hand, 180 grids, yellow. And some 240. We'll fold it in 3 with the warp, and then it'll stay folded. Picked up grain there. We'll come and deal with that with going to lock the spindle. Just work off that on that little bit. So in effect there's a slight bump, a dip there, but really, I can feel it as I'm sanding, but you won't notice it. So that's all that's going to get at this stage. Now we'll do the inside, and then I'll, or most of the inside, and then I'll burn the rim. So that's now going to fit into there, I hope. Didn't check I had the right calipers before I mounted the wood in the chuck, but anyway, it seems to be all right. Now, I really want to keep it, keep the rim pretty much that kind of shape. So there's a great kind of cut there. So what I'm going to do now is clear everything, sand, or not sand, rather vacuum up everything around here so I can do some charring, burning, and then after I've done that, then I'll do the inside. So I'm now set up with a board on the lathe bed. I've taken most of the dust away and get going with this little gas torch, propane torch. And just burn it hard, basically. And I'm trying to keep the flame going off the edge, so I'd rather there wasn't too much burning down the outside. So the aim is to get it pretty hot. And if it starts to crack up as it's charring, that's all to the good. Now there's where there's an old saw mark on the edge, so just burn that a little bit harder. Oh, there's a bigger saw mark coming up. I really don't mind if the heat opens up a few fissures on the rim, because it'll just make it a bit more interesting. Burn that hard there. This wood's very dry, but I can see a bit of moisture coming out of the end grain there. Down into that corner. So the next bit, you can just brush this off, and I do that with a. You can either do it with a hand brush, a brass brush, or a steel one. And I'd like to do it fairly aggressively, so I'm going to have it mounted in a cordless drill to start with. But if I don't get enough kind of scratching out of that, so dust removal, then I'll move to the cable power, mains power. Right, so I've gone all the way round, and just cool that fire a bit. A bit of spray water. It's ideal to have water around electricity, as you do with a lathe, but anyway, it'll be that. And then I'll get at that. Most of that's off, so I can get at that with I can lock the spindle and use the power. This is a very messy job. Right, and so on. So this will take quite a few minutes just doing this, so we'll come back when I've done that. And I'd really like all the kind of remnants of the bark, there's some off there, I'd really like to get rid of that. Oops. Right, so I'll see you a bit later. So here we are with the rim sanded off, and I didn't take away. I didn't really burn into the splits again, because I quite like the kind of white streaks coming through, but it's basically nicely textured in there. I had the brush running with the grain. So that's good, and now I just need to take out the inside without stuffing up the rim. But if I do stuff the rim, all I have to do is then go back and char it all up again, and any mistakes will get burnt out. This is a chunky form, and I'm really not going to make it a particularly thin bowl. It's not that kind of a piece. I'm just going to take a little bit more out in the middle, and then drill something of a depth hole. Drilling a depth hole here is a little bit tricky, but I'm working in relation to the rest. Put it down to about there will be fine. And then I'm going to use a 3/8 bowl gouge to make my entry cut, but we'll get some of the inside out first. Running up to about 1600. That was. I very rarely go all the way around with a gouge. I much prefer to go a little bit, get the clean cut on the end grain with the gouge, and then go in with a scraper. And the radius on the scraper on the end here, this bit is just inside the curve I'm trying to cut, just slightly tighter. And I find it much easier to relate a curve to a radius on the scraper. I could do this with a much narrower round nose tool, but it's much more difficult to get a sweeping curve that way. See how that looks, or more important, how it feels. Yeah, it's really kind of chunky. I mean, the whole purpose of this really is to have a nice wide rim. So there's a little, it's not a catch, it was there's a little step there. I can take another cut there. Now I'm going to come in with the tool right on its side. I want it right over, so we're starting the cut with the nose and just trying not to get in your way. Ease it in, then I can rotate slightly. That is just slightly too tight a curve for that tool, so get a bigger one. This is a round nose. This is really meant for doing big end grain stuff, but just right for this. So that gets me round the bend, and I can come back to the other one to go across the bottom. I'm more concerned here with the feel off the bend. And then that can flatten out as I go across the bottom. And that centre where there's usually this teeny little pimple there. The way to get rid of that is just to come up from underneath, just drop the handle and go through centre. You don't need to push. Little lump there, so I'm going to use the flatter radius. Little lump just where my finger is. That's that. Clean cut up in there. Now this starts getting difficult to sand. Again, I'm going to do it with power, and I can do it with the lathe off to start with. Back to 120 grit. The lathe might be off, but the dust extraction will be on. So I can get the inside done first, and I might even be able to come up the side a bit. Oh yes, I can. Good. Right, picked up grain in the corner. There's what looks like a catch, but I think it's actually a bit of grain. That's going to be difficult to get at. That's that side gone, and we've got a little bit the other side here. And this will just get up into the corner here so I can actually sand this. I can also do it by hand. I've got a bit of 120 grit. Little line just there which is irritating. Let me get rid of that with the sander here. I've also got a bit of a burnout with the rubber, so I'll just take that away. All standard stuff, this. Right, we'll hand sand this bit, I think. Actually, with the power sanding, that's got quite a dip in the middle, so I might just turn that lump away. That's in there. Feels better, definitely feels better. That was 180 grit, this is 240. Right, that's it. And so that's now going to get some oil. And my little oil bowl from the, this is the little end grain bowl, which distorted quite a bit. A little squirt of boiled linseed and somewhere I've got a new bit of rag. Here we are. And that basically is all that's going to get. Out. Let that soak in a bit, and I can also brush the oil in with a softer brush, or we could use a toothbrush, something like that. Not quite sure where my other brush is at the moment. Oh, there it is. So you can use something like this, and it just kind of gets it off. But I think I'll just leave that a few minutes while the oil kind of soaks in, and then I'll get back and buff it off with a cloth.